Well, we are stunned that Devin is being charged at all. I think it's important to note that even the charges they did levy today deal with his conduct after Mr. Brooks was shot. There's no charge for any action that he took, before the shooting or during the shooting. And in fact, he didn't do anything. You've seen on the video that the officers got into a struggle with Mr. Brooks. Our client, Devin, was actually injured in that struggle. He smacked his head very hard on the pavement. He was later diagnosed with a concussion. He had injuries and burns to his hand from the taser that we believe Mr. Brooks fired at him, as well as some other bruises that he received. And you can tell on the video that as the other officer and Mr. Brooks run away from where the struggle initially began, that Devin is slow to get up, slow to follow. He's still reeling from that head injury that he had. So we think his conduct on scene that day was appropriate. He acted the way a police officer absolutely ought to have acted. And we're shocked that he's being charged at all. We were particularly surprised today to hear Paul Howard say that our client had agreed to testify against Officer Rolfe and that our client had agreed to become a state's witness. That's not true. That agreement is not in place. We are cooperating with their investigation. Devin did go down yesterday and speak to the assistant district attorney and investigator, told them the facts and what he saw and what is the truth, and he will continue to do that. I think that the DA's office, the district attorney's office, ought to be ashamed of themselves for charging Devin in the first place. And to say that such agreement exists when it doesn't is, inappropriate, doesn't even begin to cover it. It's not aggravated assault. Devin did put his foot on Mr. Brooks. He thought he put it on his hand or maybe his arm. It was initially right when Devin got up to where Mr. Brooks was laying. The purpose was only to make sure that Mr. Brooks didn't have a weapon in his hand and that there was no weapon within reach. And we were talking about seconds. And once that was established, he took his foot off Mr. Brooks. There was no malice or ill intent in that action. It was just a precautionary step. I'm not even sure there's a way to adequately describe his emotional state. He went through a traumatic event. And I don't say that to take anything away from Mr. Brooks or Mr. Brooks's family or to somehow equate what happened to my client and his experience with Mr. Brooks. I'm not trying to do that at all. But he saw a man's life being taken in front of him, and it was in the course of duty, in the course of his work. He's trying to process that. Now he's trying to process and deal with the fact that the district attorney is bringing felony charges against him for his actions. So I'm not even sure there's a word that really adequately describes his emotional state at this time. Police officers in Georgia have the right to appear before a grand jury that's considering an indictment against them. And we are looking forward to telling the citizens of Fulton County what Devin Brosnan did and observed, and feel confident that he should not be charged with the crime at all. Devin Brosnan did not know that Officer Rolfe was going to put Mr. Brooks under arrest. We've seen the video. There's no verbal communication that Officer Rolfe is about to arrest Mr. Brooks. And it's not like they had some kind of, wink or nod. So Devin didn't know that Officer Rolfe was getting ready to arrest Mr. Brooks, until the officer said, okay, he said something like, I'm going to have you put your hands, I think you've had too much to drink. Can you put your hands behind your back? And that's when Devin followed his training and moved in to just assist Officer Rolfe with putting the handcuffs on Mr. Brooks.